Hi there, I'm Astro Sketch,
And I'm Slash Frame.
and welcome back to another episode of Sketch and Slash.
So sit back and enjoy the ride.
Today we will be discussing the first story arc of IDW's My Little Pony Friendship is Magic comic book series.
We will discuss this story entirely instead of one video per issue.
There will be spoilers, so if any of you haven't read this comic, then you shouldn't be watching this video.
Which I find hard to believe since this story has been out for almost a year.
When I first heard that IDW was going to make an MLP comic book series, I was a bit iffy at first. I wasn't sure if it would be good. But when I heard the title of the first story arc, I was excited, because I'll confess, Queen Chrysalis is my favorite villain in the series so far. So to bring her back into action was, in my opinion, a good decision on their part. Anyways, let us start our review of the return of Queen Chrysalis.
In this issue, we start off with the Cutie Mark Crusaders camping out on another mission into getting their cutie marks. Right off the bat, we get one of the many references that we see while watching the series. In the first page, we see Scootaloo dressed up like Indiana Jones. During their mission, they are attacked by animals who are actually changelings in disguise. This shows that changelings can turn into other creatures besides ponies.
In the next page, we see that it is now the next morning, and if you look closely, you can see a few more pop culture references, such as the Blues Brothers, My Name is Earl, and Magnum P.I. We also see quite a few cameos by some recognizable characters from the show. We also notice that several residents of Ponyville are now acting very strange, as if they have become zombies, and the only ones unaffected appear to be the main six,
Who are then attacked by the residents, resulting them into retreating to Twilight's home, while at the same time referencing invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Inside, Twilight is able to quickly determine that the whole town has been taken over by changelings, and when they try to contact Princess Celestia for help, they find that she is unable to help due to a royal emergency. Now knowing that they are on their own, they try to form some kind of battle plan, which Pinkie Pie thinks up of a plan straight out of Shaun of the Dead, which apparently works. And as they make their way through town, they find that the changelings have completely taken over Town Hall. Inside, they discover that all of the town's residents have been cocooned into pods and are guarded by a large swarm of changelings.
Most of the changelings then take the form of Pinkie Pie, and they have a showdown for the second time. This also gives Twilight and her other friends an opportunity to take out their frustrations with Pinkie Pie on the changelings fighting his magic style.
Yeah, I seriously thought that's the case.
Oh, come on! Don't tell me that Pinkie Pie isn't so annoying that they wouldn't want to give her a smacking once in a while.
Oh my gosh! I never realized how horrible it is not to be able to talk! I mean, I loved talking so much, but when I couldn't talk anymore, my tongue was all, it was the worst! Pickle barrel, pickle barrel, pickle barrel. Say it with me. Pickle barrel, kumquat, pickle barrel, kumquat, pickle barrel, kumquat, chitty chitty chitty. No more pickies, I can't take it!
She may be a bit over the top at times, but I doubt that's enough to want to hurt her. Moving on, it's actually Pinkie Pie that ends the battle as she takes out the entire changeling swarm with her party cannon, thus rescuing the entire town. But before they can celebrate their victory, they find that the CMC are still missing. Then Spike spits up a crystal ball, which within it appears Queen Chrysalis herself, and reveals that she had Philly napped the CMC, and if they want to save them, they will have to enter the Changeling Kingdom in 3 days. It turns out that this rescue mission also involves the arrival of the Secretariat's comet, which only comes every 3,000 years and gives all magical creatures a power boost.
The only problem I have with this issue is the fact that the changelings did a terrible job at imitating all the ponies they captured. Anyway, we move on to issue 2, guided by the crystal ball given to them by Chrysalis. The main six are led to a tunnel that goes through a mountain, where they encounter several obstacles. The first being a cave troll, who turns out was not as much of a threat as expected. At the time, it seemed that the comic staff might have been making fun of bronies, but it turns out this is not the case. In a Q&A session at this year's BronyCon, they said that the cave troll was actually making fun of the assistant director of MLP, who was actually a brony.
Also, Optimus Prime makes a cameo appearance. Awesome! Anyways, using her own crystal ball, Queen Chrysalis watches their every move, all the while being annoyed by the CMC. She then sends out her changelings against the main six, causing them to separate from each other. Now divided in teams of two, the changelings then take their form and made sure that each pair heard the bad things they said about them so that they will turn on each other. And when the main six finally do reunite, they explode into anger with one another.
That's when they come across a gang of giant spiders who then overpowers them. But it was Pinkie Pie who saves the day again when she gets the cave troll, whose name is Jim, that they met earlier, to help them scare the spiders off.
But unfortunately, the changelings' plan to divide them succeeds. Still angry with each other, the six split up into pairs, believing they were better off going their own way. Now, if you think about it, the main six knew they were dealing with changelings. They should have expected they would try to deceive them. After all, isn't deception their greatest strength?
Although, if you think about it, there could be a reason for this. The main six didn't know that there were changelings in the tunnel, so that might explain why they fell for their deception.
Yeah, but still, they should have expected it at any time. That's what enemies do, strike when you least expect it.
Perhaps they were distracted by the dangers of the mission that they forgot that the changelings could strike at any time.
That's a weak argument.
Although what I find interesting is that for the heroes to be that upset from what the changelings said means that perhaps deep down there might be some truth to it.
Moving on. Before we get into the next issue, I just have to say that issue 3 is the darkest issue in the entire story arc, if not the entire franchise of the show.
We start issue 3 with a flashback showing what happened to Chrysalis after the season 2 finale. She and a few of her changelings crash lands in a town where its residents are a bunch of lovable kittens. With the town filled with love, Chrysalis and her minions feed on its residents by sucking the love out of them. It's unknown whether or not the kittens died during the process, although this shows how evil Chrysalis really is.
So after feeding on the poor creatures and taking over their land, Chrysalis then makes her plan to get back at Twilight, who she blames for her defeat at Canterlot. Which brings us back to the present, with Queen Chrysalis watching as each of the main six struggle on their own since they split up, and while she's watching them, the CMC are still getting on her nerves, leading to what I think is the darkest scene of the whole series. Seriously, I never thought they would go that far. I mean, you could argue that Chrysalis didn't kill that little cat because we don't actually see it. But given the context of the situation, what other explanation is there? This means we actually have a villain that's willing to kill.
I guess no pony expected this to happen in a franchise that's unfortunately perceived as too girly. What's also disturbing is that when we see the CMC later, they act perfectly normal. You'd think three fillies witnessing something like that would be life traumatic for them. Anyway, later Twilight and her friends each run into multiple creatures and try to escape them. In the process, the gang reunites and witnesses the laws of nature take its course. What's disturbing about this scene is the fact that Fluttershy appears unfazed watching the animals eat each other, while the others were disgusted. This shows that there is a dark side to Fluttershy, just like with Pinkie Pie. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because of, like that famous saying goes, it's always the quiet ones you need to watch out for. Then after exchanging apologies, the gang resumes their quest to save the Cutie Mark Crusaders, thus ending issue 3.
Like I said, this issue is pretty dark. Way to go to step up on the storytelling. So, now that we reach the final issue of the story arc, the main six finally arrive at the Changeling Kingdom, with Chrysalis waiting for them. Now the other five have full faith in Twilight's abilities and acknowledges that she is the strongest magic user of the group. And although Twilight knows she's the strongest, but she still has doubts that she can defeat a villain like Queen Chrysalis.
While the main six are exploring the castle, we get to see more references such as Temple of Doom, It, The Shining, Evil Dead 2, and Phantom of the Opera, until finally they make it to Queen Chrysalis' chambers, where the main six fight Chrysalis and her minions to save the Cutie Mark Crusaders.
The first round ends with Twilight unleashing her most powerful blast on Chrysalis, and although Chrysalis is unharmed, she is still impressed with Twilight's power, causing her to change her plans and in a Darth Sidious-like manner tries to tempt Twilight to join the dark side. And although Twilight rejects her temptations, it isn't until Chrysalis threatens her friends does she submit. But when Chrysalis double-crosses her, she fights back, leading to what I think is the coolest fight scene in the entire franchise.
With the help of the comet and the lives of her friends at stake, Twilight taps into her inner power and goes into the Avatar state, which allows her to defeat Chrysalis and save her friends. With Chrysalis defeated, Princess Celestia arrives, every pony celebrates, and Chrysalis and her minions are trapped in her own maze, thus finishing the first story arc of the comic series.
So, what did we think of the arc? Well, I'll admit, I'm a bit biased. After all, Queen Chrysalis is my favorite villain. But I loved it. The story was good, and the art was great. I also liked the way Queen Chrysalis was portrayed, from being sinister, scary, and in some cases funny. And again, I was really surprised at how dark this arc was, especially for an all-ages comic book. And let's not forget Optimus Prime makes a cameo appearance. How awesome is that? As for what I didn't like, other than a few plot holes, for example, Chrysalis is never actually brought to justice. At the end, Twilight just left her trapped inside her own castle. She even said that Chrysalis will eventually get out, meaning she'll be able to invade Canterlot again. For a mare who prides herself for being smart, this is a major lapse of judgment on her part. Other than that, I can't think of anything else I didn't like.
As for me, I think this story was a great way to begin the comic series. It had everything: plot, comedy, action, and suspense. The only thing that bothers me is that during the final confrontation, it shows how useless the other elements are. The fate of Equestria always relies on these 6 mares, but in reality, it always focuses on Twilight. Nightmare Moon, Discord, they were defeated by Twilight, while the rest are there to provide moral support. It is because of that moral support is what gives Twilight the willpower to defeat Chrysalis. Equestria Girls also shows this as well. It kind of makes me feel sad that the others will never be able to reach the bar where Twilight stands. Especially now that a certain Sun Pony has leveled up to a higher status.
I'm going to have to disagree with that whole statement, but I think that can wait for a later video. Overall, this was a really good story arc. I'm rating this comic a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it.
I have to agree, this story was anything short of awesome. So I'm also giving it a 9 out of 10 as well.
This concludes our review of the first story arc of the comics by IDW. We hope you enjoyed watching this video.
We'd like to hear your feedback, so please comment below, and we'll see you next time.